thanks, first of all, for being here. Which works will you present yourself?
So I will present 3 works. A performance from 2007 called Kindertotenlieder with 5 dancers and live musicians, Stephen O'Malley and Peter Rehberg. And I will present L'étang, who is my latest performance, who should have premiered last November, who still didn't premiere yet. So I hope it's going to premiere in May, and who knows, perhaps it's going to premiere in June. Anyway, that's a piece with 2 actresses by text on a text of Robert Walser, with music by François Bonnet and Stephen O'Malley, and the performance at the school with Katia Petrovic, with a DJ set by Peter Rehberg, referring a lot to 90s technoculture.
The last work is very much for this location?
It's a very site-specific work, yeah, exactly.
Can you tell a bit more about it?
So the work we're going to present at the school is performed by Katia Petrovic, a very long collaborator and fantastic dancers, and she's going to refer to the experience of party, especially in the field of rave parties and technoculture. And what is very important to me is to reconsider. It's actually, you would have a similar idea in Kindertotenlieder, where we're referring to black metal culture, is these experiences of parties and the culture that is created around alternative music, it can be techno and punk and rock and metal and black metal, are actually deep answers to experiences that are lacking, are answers. So it's not only a music culture, it's codes and how people gather together and what they do together and what type of strong and deep experiences they are looking for, not only through the music they're going to listen to, but also the whole visual and the whole codes about how you gather together. And this social gathering in concerts and parties are very essential and deep experiences that are reinvented by young generation in different ways. And they're actually somehow disconsidered, and we can see today that they're considered as non-essential, where they're obviously social gathering with codes and invented ritual or reinvented ritual are extremely essential, not only for your growth, but actually have also a strong health impact. So if we talk about health, I didn't invent anything. I'm just mentioning the work of searcher in psychology Bernard Rimet and all his colleagues who are working on the extremely important positive health impact of social gathering. So it is very surprising these days that this is kind of pretty out of the picture, where our health seems to be the central topic. So let's develop that topic further.
I think exactly my question, like how did the work come about? When did you think like, okay, this should be made for this festival?
Because actually it is referring another piece that we presented here called Crowd, and I thought it would be very interesting to work with Katia on her not being able to be in this piece, and a person not being able to experience this social gathering. So it's actually about her missing, or about a person missing deeply social gathering and this type of experience. So it's a very lonely piece, and we're going to work through the physicality of the missing physicality that is also coming out of this strong missing of social gathering, that I think is turning into a huge pain and desperation right now.
They say that they invite artists that have that also look to other disciplines, that are working perhaps transdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Would you recognize yourself in that?
It's always a very funny question, this question of transdisciplinary, because I do understand it when you tell it to me, but at the same time, I do not understand it because I do not understand how not to be transdisciplinary when you're working with performing arts, theater, dance, even when you're doing movies. These are transdisciplinary mediums. And I would say working consciously transdisciplinary or deliberately transdisciplinary is paying a special attention to the articulation of all the parameters that are constituting these works. So I think it is beautiful to write with lights and sound and movement and text and narrative and rhythms and lines and colors. And I mean, this is, in terms of composition or stage writing or movie writing, I think it is the strength of these artworks to be able to compose with all these different medias. I often think about music composition, so it's like considering all these different aspects. Again, lights and visuals and movements and body and text and whatever as different instruments, and you do compose with all these different instruments and notes together. So yeah, work like, I often quote work like Jacques Tati's Playtime, that I think is kind of a masterpiece in terms of transdisciplinary, deliberately composition. But again, you can just not care about it, but you cannot be not transdisciplinary when you're doing this type of works.
Yeah, so looking to the other disciplines that Holland Festival is presenting, or it goes by itself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think these are also, when we're doing artworks, we're creating languages. I was talking about perception, creating new languages, creating new forms is trying to create new languages to talk the world, to say the world, and to say the world differently. And making researches and trying to investigate new forms also makes it very essential to question your forms and to be able to shift forms and even media to question. I think it's a very common exercise you do when you study philosophy, when you try to think about a notion, then you would check out translation in various languages to put it in perspective. And I do think it's the same with signs and articulations of signs. When you change forms and even media, it allows you to question even more precisely the obvious relation you have to signs and make this obvious relation not obvious anymore, and be able, again, to question it.
Another work that you mentioned is Kindertotenlieder.
Mm-hmm.
It's a work from 2007.
Yeah.
And you're now making it with a new cast.
Yeah, we've been touring it for a very long time, and the cast has been changing over the years, and recently we changed a larger part of the cast, and it's kind of the new generation of dancers I'm working with that were also performing in crowd that we show here in the Holland Festival. And I mean, a piece is a live performance is a live performance. So sometimes I feel it's like a growing plant. It's not something that stays the same over the years. It's been moving all over the years and growing with what we are discovering artistically, growing also, of course, it's very permeable to what is the world, to what is society, to what are the people who are involved. So yeah, this plant has been growing for 14 years now. And the responses of the audience all through all the years have been always very strong, and it feels that the dialogue that this piece is creating with the society is still very strong. So that's why, I mean, that's, I guess, the main reason we feel it's still important to show it. I also think it is, in performing arts, of course, the question of history of performing arts is a deep issue because the pieces are disappearing. And you can have a lot of archives, including videos. They will never replace and never fully report and never fully tell you what is the experience of a piece. And video of performance for me are especially tricky because you really think you see it. And I know, for example, in my work, it is a very physical experience in the space. So it looks like, and it's nothing like what you would experience. So I do think it is important to be able to show all the works, especially when the audience is excited to see it. And and also to keep, I would say, our history of performance alive. I'm very excited when I get the chance to see pieces from the 80s, from the 70s. It's very rare, but yeah, I do think it's to avoid this possible amnesia in performing art. It is important to be able to put in dialogue works from several periods. I also know myself as an audience, reader, a movie lovers. When I'm interested in the work of an artist, I like to be able to encounter several books or movies or pieces, because a work of an artist usually is the whole work. So, I mean, even encountering one work is usually a full experience. It is like a conversation. So if you want to go further in a conversation of the work of an artist, then of course, if you can meet works from several periods, that's always very interesting. So we try to share that with the audience. Actually, Kindertotenlieder came. I have to be frank. It's hard to be precise. So I try to be as honest as possible, but certainly I'm wrong.
Wrong on what?
In what I think was before. It's my. But I know, I mean, for sure, I was thinking a lot about that book of Georges Bataille called The Accursed Chair. And it's interesting how it resonates with nowadays and the current situation with the pandemic. The Accursed Chair is, Georges Bataille is a philosopher, but in this case he writes a book that is more an economical book, that is about unproductive expenses, talking about rituals and arts and I would say all these experiences that are unproductive in a way that there are financial losses, they are not investment with gains, and how a lot of societies always, the necessity of having spaces of loss, and how most of societies, how they did organize these spaces of loss through rituals and celebrations and ceremonies, and how with the arrival of or the growing of neoliberal capitalism, these spaces disappeared. And I do think this is exactly pointing what is called as non-essential, where obviously these are very essential experiences that are at the heart of a human being. So it is actually a strong criticism on this type of system. And Kindertotenlieder, I wanted to refer to different types of rituals. So we do refer to a pagan ritual, Austrian pagan ritual, the walks of the Perchten, to a religious ritual, funeral, and I would say to a contemporary alternative culture ritual, who is a highly theatrical experience that is a black metal concert. So the piece is actually all is actually experiencing all these different types of ceremonials that are also referring very strongly to romantic culture. So it links very strongly romantic culture to, I would say, contemporary romantic culture that you can find through black metal and rock culture. There is also perhaps what I didn't say it yet, but I think in the question of perception, trying to investigate our perception, I try to invent formal forms where I can unfold the experience of times and memory in the present experience. How in the present experience, in the present, past, future, memory are all actually experience. All these experiences of times, plural, I experience that I do in the present time. So how can I create forms that are showing or unfold these different experience of times in the present. So Kindertoten Leader is kind of a weird investigation of a person in its own memory. And this investigation is even more twisted, that the person wants to do this investigation and is at the same time finding and hiding what he is looking for. So it is this strange experience.
You say the strange experience. Now and then it's also called scary or uncanny.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say I would say first of all, it really depends on the sensitivity and taste and who is the audience who is coming there. I think the pieces I try to create also to create spaces where you could be triggered as an audience member and go inside yourself. So there is a lot of space for projection. And we go through very contradictory and different. The works are very emotional, and I think it's a strong mixture between uncanny, between scary, between funny. I think it was really hilarious and also grotesque and sensual and even sexual and violence and extremely soft and very tender. And so there are all these very different physical and emotional experience that are unfolding in different ways in the piece. It's performed by two actresses, Ruth Vega Fernandez and Adele Haenel, and they're playing several characters. And to make it very short, it's the story. I would say it's the first time I really deal with the topic of family, staging somehow a family. And it could be said in a short way that it's a story of a boy who feels not loved by his mother or even mistreated by his mother and is simulating a suicide to check if she really doesn't love him. That's the Robert Walser story that we keep. And then I often work with several layers of narration. So I do have the narration of Walser and I have other narrations. I also care a lot about subtext and what I'm very interested when we talk about perception is what are we trained to hear? What are we trained not to hear? Because of course silences, there are very different experiences of silences. And what is said or what can I understand in the silences, under the text, in between the text, is actually a big challenge. And we do understand how much we're trained. And it's actually a very fun experience with the poem because we had some people who could see it, not official. We didn't have the open, but we could have some visitors to test how they do understand. And it's interesting. It's not that they do not understand; it's that they are trained not to see certain things. And it is interesting to see who and why they don't see certain things that are, if you watch it, very strong, and even sometimes they're like, oh, it's too obvious, but some people would really not see it. So it's, I would say, probably a critic about also, I would say, the society system, the patriarchal society system we're in, that find its roots in the family system, how it is in Western culture. And also thinking about the space of a family, of a space that is, I would say, an outlaw space. It is kind of all over the world. In France recently, this year, last year, there's been a lot of movements about abuses and criticizing and trying to analyze further systems of dominations. Of course, it started with Me Too, and you can see in the art world. And I think the creative space in theater, in movies, is, I would say, you know as a director how much you can manipulate people. And it is interesting making that work to understand how it works. And of course, to be very responsible and not to fuck up and not to play that terrible game. And I would say it's a similar experience for me. It's similar space in the family where you can, you have pretty strong freedom to abuse and manipulate very strongly the family members, especially as the patriarch. Doesn't mean you do it, but you have a strong freedom to do it. And it does happen, and we do understand it happens much more than what we want to face. So, the point is investigating, I would say, the dynamics of the system of domination in its very roots, from the childhood on.
If you say about manipulation, like as a director,
Yeah.
it would be the audience, or it would be the people you work with, or with
Just
to be clear.
and I'm talking mainly about the artist. When you work as a choreographer, director, movie director, I mean, I would say the usual techniques is making people fragile, creating trust, revert, making them not trust themselves, but making them thinking, I mean, not untrusting themselves and just trusting what you would tell to them, and putting them in a very vulnerable situation. And I mean, there are many techniques, but these are like the common ones. And from there, you can basically do a lot. So, and we do know also, I mean, art world is I would say, fragile economical work also, that people, actors, dancers, these are like very fragile works, even technicians and all the people around. So there is also this situation where people are looking for work and are, I don't know what's the English word, precaire.
Precarity.
The precarity of this
situation.
business
Yeah.
also makes people very vulnerable. So there is, you are in a very strong power situation as a director, and it is interesting because it is a major topic in this society, and when you get to experiences to see how it works and how you can take advantage of your privilege, or be careful not to do that and not to abuse. So how is that working? So yeah, so now I was talking more about the relation of the director and actors and dancers.
Yeah, which there is a similarity between the relation, or the relations within a family.
Yes,
Yeah.
and which is, I would say, the roots of, I don't even know how you say it in English, capitalism neoliberal, it's neoliberal capitalism, or it's...
I would also say neoliberalism, but there's also
anyway, the
capitalism
roots of
with-
this system is strongly patriarchal. So it is the same system that, I mean, what is also, we're in a society where we want to say the intimacy and the society are different. It is not true. It's how the society is actually invading our, I don't know, when we talk about sexism and patriarchalism and racism, and how is this integrated in our flesh from childhood on? So how do we integrate a society system? What is our sensual relation to capitalism? So how do we integrate in the deepest intimacy a social system that is pretending to be natural and outside of us? So, and who this, I would say this, it's a system based on relation of domination who will always defend inequality. So when this type of system is wants to, for example, defend feminists, there is a strong contradiction there. So yeah, it's. I mean, we need to go in all these sites. And so with the pond, I try to dig in this deepest intimacy. How is this system growing in us as a little plant when we're a child?
Was there a reason for you really to go into the family? Like to now say, now I'm going to
I
focus.
think it's exactly because I'm investigating. I try. It's not that I know. It's just I try with the works. I mean, I have. What is very important is before I studied philosophy and there was something I was strongly missing. It was having my sensitive experience. I mean, developing my knowledge through my sensitive physical experience. And that's why actually I really shifted to art, where I do think it is a special way to develop your knowledge through physical sensitive experience. And so it's not that I know and then I work, is I have questions and intuitions, and like when you're thinking, it's through thinking that you do understand. So it's through creating that I do understand always better, or that I discover new areas. So I would say this invasion, it took me years, and I feel sometimes very stupid, and it can be also really nice to recognize that you're like, I'm so naive about things. And it took me years to understand. I felt I'm in a situation where I feel pretty free and free from oppression, and I chose my life very strongly the way I wanted. And it took me years to understand how much I integrated the system of domination in myself, and it turned into a shock about me thinking I was outside of it, and then feeling like a rape, like a social rape of a structure that is inside me, like bars of metal. So from being conscious about that, after years, I thought I need to go to the roots about where is this invasion of the social norm of a political system in your own flesh happening. And the space of the family is one of the spaces where it starts.
So, but there's visual arts, there's music, there's theater, choreography, and we could name them all, or, I mean, there we come again with the disciplines, labeling them. But how does that work in the process? When, like, do you bring music in from the beginning, or is it there and you make a choreography on it?
I mean, the thing is, there is not one recipe. I could, and that would be so relaxing. But I try to start from zero again, so I have to reinvent my process of working. Obviously, there are things perhaps that could stay, but because we really try to reinvent our process of working and the form each time, there is not one way. I would say I do work often with, I mean, the Robert Walser is not a great example, but often with original text, original music, original visuals, original dramaturgy and everything. And I do work, it depends. I mean, there can be text before, or music before, or visuals before, or themes before. There is, the thing is, we do work the different elements a little bit separately, and not too long. And then I bring everything together, choreography and I would say set design, visuals, light, music, and text together. And then, so I work over a long time, over years often. And it's like a dialogue. It's like a dialogue between the artist and the elements. And then we get together, and then because it takes time, if you need to rewrite part of the music or the text, you cannot do it like from one day to another. It can take weeks or months. So we do, and then I do give indication to the musician. They would do something, we try it out on stage. So it's, what they do is a response, and then I would respond to their response, so for example. So that's how it's kind of a dialogue that is growing and that takes a lot of time. And that's how it's getting very intricate and how we build it basically together over the time. So my longest study is actually music, and then I mean, it's not like an official study, but it's a very long practice. I did actually practice visual arts with my mother from childhood on, so that's actually very valuable and long practice.
And family again.
Exactly. there are good aspects. I don't want to raise everything, but and I have to thank her a lot for that. And she was also growing my critical eye on visual a lot, was showing me very strong arts from early on. So actually for me it was more an investigation in sculpture and movement, or I'm very obsessed about the representations of humans. What are the representations of humans, plural? What are the relations we have to them, from archaic culture to contemporary culture? So this is, I would say, my official story, and but I also actually did start with dance, and I would say my work these days, you asked before, is perhaps mainly considered as choreographical, where it is really as much theatrical and visual, but I would say how it's presented. But it also makes sense in a way that what is choreographical, it's not only an idea. What is choreographical is also what is choreography today, for example, in Europe. And I feel very close. The closest I feel these days, the artist I feel the closest to these days, are choreographers. So I'm like, I'd rather be, if you want to stick me in a family, if I can choose, I'd rather be in that one. But the funny thing, talking about, to refer to what I tried to say before about your body and what you take years and decades, or what actually, at least it took me years and decades to understand, is I did start with dance, and I did start with ballet. I mean, I don't want to say all ballet classes are horrible. Mine was, in a way that it fucked up completely all my confidence in my body. And I was considered as a bad body. So from there on, I stepped away. I'm like, okay, my body is rubbish from these standards. So I'm going to focus on my interior and my brain. And I went into literature and philosophy and all theory. Though I had this love for dance from childhood on, but I went to the wrong class, or in the wrong society, or was in the wrong norms. And it is kind of even a joke that, but my body brought me there. It's just like, you want to put me away, but I'm here, and I'm
and from
here,
there,
and
questioning the social
I'm not
construct.
angry at you, we're gonna grow it together, and we're gonna find the right way.
When you're continue to recur to this social construct, I mean, it was there also.
Exactly.
Very much.
I mean, it's funny.
So
I mean, it's kind of like a very
that.
original pain. It's just like, why do you make me sing like I'm a piece of shit, when I'm just like a little girl who would like to dance, and I don't look like, or I don't move like the way the society wants me to do it. I mean, how violent and how dramatic that is. I mean, it's funny too when you think of, I mean, it's not funny, but the way the life did build itself up is kind of funny after. And I'm very thankful that this will and these desires and this sensitivity was so strong to make me go that way. But it's kind of a battle. It's kind of a battle with these norms and with this social construct that we also know as, I mean, it's the same. I had often the question about why do I work so much on teenagehood. And I do think what is the big battle in teenagehood is a big battle that we know as adults, that we know as children, but that we know very strongly as adults, is the battle with the social norms that the society tries to press us violently in it. So when teenagers get crazy or want to kill themselves, the answer is, oh, they're suffering with raging hormones. That's the easy answer. And that's the reality, is that they're suffering into this big battle of social norm that is extremely violent, and that it makes sense that they want to kill themselves because it's so violent what we get pressed in. And obviously the years of teenagehood can be for many people the big battle, and then you can stay in your cultural jail for your life long after and not questioning it anymore. But I mean, yeah, where are these pains coming from, and this dilemma and these structures, I mean, these struggles, and and I do think as adults, this is not something that is solved at all. The opposite, it's something that is unsolved, that we do live with. So I do think it's interesting to go back to this moment of the big battle.
Because it is a recurring theme in your almost, I mean, it is about the social construct. It seems that the hope is then also in them. They have the biggest battle, but they also have the hope.
Totally, I do. I mean, we're talking of Elsa Dorlin before. I do think the new generations are so much more articulate about the critique of the norms and that system and that political system and that economical system. They're so smart, so aware about things that we weren't. And even if, I mean, we weren't lazy, we were looking for all that, but I mean, it's life working, and they're so aware, and they're so smart, and they're so excited, and they're so much more advanced, and they really want to change things. Where that wasn't as strong in my generation. I'm 45. And with these strong critics about what happened in the 70s and what also the Great Revolution and also the terrible authoritarian system that comes out from the revolution of the 70s, young people are so aware about it. That's great. And they're so excited. So, of course, they're the biggest hope out there for the strongest change. And also this authoritarian and stress from dominating people. You want to laugh about it, but because of course they'd better stress out, and I do understand the stress.
Youth, music, you said like that is where I was educated the longest in.
Yeah, exactly.
Which role did it play then?
I mean,
was it there always?
Yeah, I mean, I could practice music, I could play harp, and I could also, and I mean, the interesting thing in harp is I could have very different repertory, contemporary music, but then also medieval music, or I could play Indian music. I mean, I could play very, very various work in there, various repertories in there, and I could also work with an orchestra, in which I could discover composition like Weber, and that was very interesting to play them, because of course I could access the understanding of the composition better, or Schoenberg, or so in there. For example, when we talk about performance composition, for example, in Weber, where you have a musical sentence, perhaps the harp would do a part of it, the cello another one, and the piano another one. So for the ear, you could, if you're not used to it, you could not understand the sentence, but when you get used to it, you're like, okay, it's a little exercise. But then, so of course, creating new forms, it can be music, literature, like a new language. You learn it, and then it's very exciting to be able to understand that new language. So when you are used to hear that, you're like, it's like very playful. And of course, that refers to if a composition is made out of one sentence would be light and body movements and a text and a sound. Perhaps you just watch the body and the text, and you would miss part of the sentence that was done out of the light and the sound too. So anyway, so that was a strong influence about stage composition. And of course, music. My experience of music is also dancing and dancing on music and dancing in parties on music and listening to music in my room and listening to music in my Walkman. And I've been very much into industrial music, new wave, techno, electronic music, rock, and I don't know. I want to just thank so much all these musicians and all these musics to have been in my life and created all this beautiful experience and strong experience in my life. So yeah, music was kind of everywhere, or is kind of everywhere.
It sounds like a base, like under everything almost. And if we speak about music, of course, I also think about the other associated artist, Ruiji Sakamoto.
Yes.
You met him.
Yes.
Virtually.
Yes.
Yes. And did you share interest? Or was there a connection?
Yes, there is a strong connection. I mean, I would say the two main topics were, I would say, the experience of time. What, of course, music composition is a great space to question or trigger the experience of time, what I try to do differently in a formal way in my work. And talking about Jacques Attali or thinkers, or Bergson or thinkers who are, I mean, how philosophy is investigating the questions of time. And also, I do think one strong bond between us is the love of arts and other artists, big love of other artists' work. And not one direction, not only one kind, but what we do both love is artists who are inventing new forms, however they are, but new forms is trying to invent new languages, trying to invent a moving society and a moving way of perceiving the world. So I do think that's an obvious link between us in the deep love of arts and artists and our passion of investigating also new works by other artists.
And if you speak about time, I think we recognize it also in both of your works very much.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about politics, it's interesting also, I mean, saying that even the past is a moving experience. It's not one thing that is the way you can reconsider. I mean, the way you're writing the past is not the way it happened. It's the way you're writing. It's the same thing, the way you're writing the present and the way you are writing the anticipating future. So I think it's interesting on the political aspect to always remember it. And I think one very interesting issue these days, or always, but very strongly again talking about young generation, is just like, you could write, we could learn history, or we could write history a little differently. The way you did teach us history, it's not really neutral and objective. It looks like a strong political project that will change, and that's why we're going to reconsider the history in a different perspective.
And that we look back different.
Yeah, exactly. But so the of course, I mean, talking through rhythms and sensation and different rhythms and different sensation that overlap themselves can be a way of refer the experience of these different overlapped times that we're experiencing in the present time.
Yeah, if you say we're going to look back different or rewrite that history, I mean, that's again the social construct.
Exactly.
Where you also wrote this beautiful text about, and a world that needs ceaseless reconstruction.
The what?
You wrote this text, a world that needs ceaseless
Yeah,
reconstruction.
Yes.
And the construction of our reading of the world, the constructed reality that we take for reality.
Yes.
And to also you consider theater
Yeah.
a reality that we construct.
Yes. Not less than the one we encounter in the street.
Again,
It's not less. It's not more constructed than the one we encounter in the street.
Yeah, the reality that we encounter in the street is very much constructed, but also the theater setting, not only what we watch.
Yeah, and again, it is a necessity to construct it to be able to exchange, so we can have similar reference and we can talk a similar language if our perception of the world is matching. So it's not against that. The perception needs to be cultural build-up if we want to have an interaction between humans. It's the critic is about when this cultural construction is naturalized. It's saying that's the way the world is. No, that's a hypothesis. And the very exciting and creating thing about that is that as it's a hypothesis, we could invent another one.
We're looking forward.
Me too, very much.